Why don't you? Yeah, if it's working, you can just take it out. It's a snippish time.
Oh, that's the greatest thing in the world. I think that's hand in hand. Squeezed in.
Oh, just sort of, you just sort of how it would be when you go down to 8 levels. Probably. Yeah, right.
All aboard!
Move for us.
Well, these guys are doing what I like to do.
Again, good afternoon and welcome aboard, everyone. We're just a few minutes away from departure here, but I know there's a lot of new money walking on the boat. Some of you folks got some good-looking gold hanging around the neck, so we can't have any jealousy break out here, so we're going to let everybody else know where you got it. We recommend the El Dorado north of here, where they'll show you how we mined gold in the old days, and then how we do it today. The best part is they'll give you a little sack of dirt and a pan, and a nice warm water to pan it in. You get to keep some of that yourself. We're going to watch a little video clip of that. And our boat right underway. El Dorado gold mine coming up on these screens here. So the first generation is now in command of the business. And our captain is on the day to sell on the right-hand side of the street. We looked at it, we thought it was hit like that. Right next to him is good friend Ken Perkins. up here, I think, ahead of us, yeah, up onto the right. So watch him now. He's going to do a slip turn. This is a neat maneuver. He'll fall out of the sky sideways. If you can't quite see him out the window, then keep an eye on one of the monitors. Here he comes. He heels this little airplane over, slips right on down, arcs around, doesn't gain a lot of forward airspeed so he can keep the airplane under control. And he'll line right up on the end of the runway here. While he's doing that, he's also looking through the little window between the wings to make sure that there isn't anybody that's run out on the field here so he can land safely. Now, these big wheels on the bottom of this airplane, we call them tundra tires. You'll be able to see him flex just a little bit as he touches down on the grass. And they absorb the shock of a landing very, very nicely. All right. Prospectors or missionaries or some of the Athabascan elders or some of the rivermen and women and get some of those stories because they have some amazing adventures to relate. This little boat ahead of us is quite a bit of history. This was discovery number 1 and it was built by that young Bill Wilson enthusiastically. Great honor for me to present to you the last of the old-time Yukon riverboat pilots here. Our senior captain, second generation Alaskan, Jim Binkley. Wheelhouse, near the wheelhouse of the boat he built. Captain, thank you, sir. And next to him is his partner, his wife, and his best friend of 51 summers. They've been steamboat together. Your hostess, Mary Binkley. We just call her the Admiral, by the way. Captain Jim and Mary B, thank you, folks, for waving to us. We're going to enjoy living your life together. Captain Paul, what was the trip? Out of this little creek on the right. See the break in the willow? We'll have this on your monitor for you, too. Particularly these young folks you'll be spending time with on the boat today. They represent beautifully the local native culture, both Indian and Eskimo. School teacher at our university, that's what she's studying elementary. Custom fitting the logs together when they were all peeled off. Then they walked away from the place for about a year and a half until it was all settled up. cutting the windows and doors in with a chainsaw and moving it. Looks like it went up last night. It's been there well over 10 years. It's all white spruce growing behind it, too, small evergreen. That makes a great before and after picture. Right next door, a modern crane home. We like to use 2x6 or 2x8 walls. It's actually a little more insulation. These quadrant windows, those are triple pane. 2 layers of air. Sled. That family doesn't suffer from fabrication. They don't feel close in or dark in the day. It's beautiful view right out their front window. Have that fine feeling that the old country has a company cabin. You'll see a variety of architectural styles. This river flooded in 1967 but has been controlled by the Corps of Engineers ever since. So folks will build what looks to you like very close to the water line. But this level can be controlled, and so we're not too concerned about another Well, you're right. A bigger thrill would be trying to get back in the house on a night like that, actually. Without damaging anything. That'd be a challenge. Now, as we were passing Discovery number 1, you might have heard me say to Captain Bickley, "Thank you, sir, for letting us live your life today." In a sense, this trip is modeled on the kind of activity that started over here now on the left-hand side and went on out to the Yukon River. I'm talking about the freight hauling operation the captain was responsible for. Some of the old boats are still here. The Millside, that's the home of the Bank Beaver family. They're beginning to stagger their winter food supply right in front of that lodge. And they will heat that from the bottom of the ice up. The river freezes about 3.5 to 4 feet across the surface. That food supply will stay right there, and they can get to it right outside their front door, even in the coldest weather. Very fortunate that our good friend Susan Butcher became a mom about 3 years ago because she and her husband and partner David Monson and their daughter moved closer to Fairbanks. With the youngster, they decided not to remain 140 miles northwest of here at their homestead. And they've been
for the first 10 days of their life. And this bonding continues through the first 6 weeks of their life. Now these little guys that we have out are 4 weeks old. You can see they're starting to walk around pretty good. So in 2 more weeks, we'll start them on the daily walks in the woods. And we like to take many of the older dogs out with us on those walks because what we're trying to teach the puppies is the same love and adventure that we have, and also the beginnings of a trusted relationship. That's pretty easy to do because there are many obstacles out there on the trail. There's some logs to climb over, some water to swim through, some steep cliffs to go up, and we're there to encourage them over the obstacles, praise them on the other side, and most importantly, if it's too much for them, then we're there to lift them over it. And this way they can start understanding that they can understand that we'll never ask them to go any further or faster than they're capable of.
Well, it's fun. They were getting the idea real well with David lifting them over the logs here. Can you spot a great lead dog this young?
Well, I wish it was so simple. When we see these guys, one of them being very precocious out on those logs, it's tempting to think that that might be your next champion. We really learned that years of patience of bringing each puppy along to their full potential before we can find out which ones are going to be the champion sled dogs. And I can probably best describe that to you in the story of a dog that I had born here 19 years ago, who was a young dog, didn't look like he was going to be a good sled dog. He had a poor hair coat. He had no confidence in his pom-pom head. Most hunters would have given up on him and sold him off as a pet dog. But I worked very hard with him to physically bring him around through special nutrition and training. But mostly I concentrated on his lack of confidence. And I gave him a strong name, Granite. He soon learned to draw from my strength and confidence, and we became a very powerful team. And all the extra work paid off because he turned into not just a good sled dog, but a great leader. Granite ended up leading me to victories in 1986 and 87 Iditarod, both of those in record time, along with countless other races between 300 and 500 miles in length. But his story goes on from there. while we were training for the 1988 racing season, he became very seriously ill, and I had rushed him down to Anchorage to a veterinary hospital to try and save his life. We set up a cot next to his kennel so that I could sleep with him there, petting him and willing him to live. And finally, after 2 weeks, the veterinarians told me that I could take him home, but that he was never going to be able to run again, that he had permanent damage to his heart, liver, and kidneys. So I took him back to our homestead in Eureka. And he was living in the cabin with David and I, but every time we would take the other dogs out on runs, he would cry and howl, wishing that he could go out with us. And what the veterinarians didn't understand is that Granite had grown to be a magnificent canine athlete who loves to run and race. All the dogs love competition, and they understand when they have won. And they have as much pride as any human athlete. Granite was determined to get back on the team. The veterinarians decided to let him start training with the little puppies on 2-mile runs. And he soon advanced to running with the youth again, running with the main team. And the veterinarians okayed him for a 200-mile race. And he towed that young team to a record-setting victory. And then 1.5 months later, he went on to do the impossible. He led me to victory in Iditarod. And he did it by pulling me through a blinding snowstorm. It stopped all my competitors. So we finished 14 hours in front of the second-place musher who couldn't make it through the storm. That made Granite the only lead dog to ever win 3 consecutive Iditarods.
What an amazing achievement, career, and love this sport. Certainly miss Granite as you do. He passed away last winter at the age of 17 after a remarkable career. But of course his essence and energy is still very much with us in this dog yard, I know.
Well, it certainly is. We have a lot of his children here. In fact, the female that just whelped yesterday is one of his daughters. And we also have a lot of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Now, these guys are all grandchildren. This is 4 different litters. The youngest group is 6 months of age, and the oldest group is 12 months. And so they're in different stages and their development to become sled dogs. Now, we like to put them in harness for their first time when they're 5.5 months of age. And that's a very exciting day. We'll take one adult leader out with us, such as Hark over here, 4 to 6 puppies behind. And it's so instinctive in them to pull that within just a minute or two, they look like a small adult team of dogs. So we actually have a saying here at the kennel that it only takes us 2 minutes to teach them to go, but about 2 years to teach them to whoa.
Well, now you mentioned 5.5 months harnessing them the first time. What happens if that comes like now with no snow on the ground?
Well, what we're doing is having them pull the 4-wheel carts right now on a cool day, but on the hotter days, we have to look for an alternate means of exercise. So we'll take up to 20 at a time in our riverboat. It's a little bit bigger than that one. Go down to one of the islands on the Tanana and just run them loose out there. And for every mile we run, they go about 10. So that's some wonderful exercise. And then we've got one other alternative means right here in the dog lodge. And that's this modified horse walker where we've got the dog houses and the platforms on there. And I guess it's like a kid on a merry-go-round. The dogs just love to pull around. And then if one of them decides that they've had enough, well, they'll just jump on board for a ride.
Last one on works the hardest. Well, now we'll get a chance to see some of the dogs that you have actually won the Iditarod with a little while at Chena Village, won't we?
Yeah, David will be joining you down there.
I've seen enough of this. I'm gonna see more.
You are not getting a picture of the sofa in the yard. Don't waste my film. And pool, too.
Then over on the left-hand side, another section of the range pretty common is swampy muskeg, or a lot of standing water. Now the moonlight goes over here. Maybe take a look here too. Now let's start with a young lady. She's about 23 weeks right here in front. Got her first set of antlers. and is always full of energy. And her mother, behind her, dropped her antlers when she gave birth. Now, female reindeer and caribou are the only members of the deer family, the females,
Can't even see 'em
that
anymore.
will actually drop their antlers annually. Like a bunch of different curative properties are attributed to reindeer antlers. So as you look at those two males, that's about $2,000 worth of antler on the hook, and you keep the animal and regrow those antlers next year. So I want to thank Jeremy for bringing them out here and sharing them with us. And we'll see the boys and girls again in just a little while when we go ashore. And the Tanana River is coming up. And it's pretty unique. You get a sense of nature's power here as we see the wedding of these two rivers. Now, the Chena has no glacial activity, so there's none of the silt that's associated with glacial movement, these rivers of ice that course down the mountain valleys and crush the rock and soil under them into a powder that's as soft and fine as baking flour. But you'll see this out in the Tanana, and the wedding of these two rivers is really dramatic here. So you might want to get yourselves to each side so you can look right down in it. Dave will have good video too as we move along.
It's like the two rivers coming
And you'll
together.
see layer upon layer of dissolved mountain range. About 120 miles off to our left shoulders are the peaks of the Alaska Range. They are made up primarily of a mica schist type mineral, very soft metamorphic rock. And over time, the glaciers just grind this down.
Right here.
Take a look at these clouds here that are coming up off the bottom. I'll guarantee you, you'll never look at cream in your coffee quite the same way again after this experience. Welcome to the Tanana River, largest glacial-fed river in the
Take a couple
world.
pictures of this. A couple still
This
pictures.
is a major tributary, of course, of the Yukon. Totally different river system now than the Chena. Jump into your head. What do you think? How about 100,000 tons every 24 hours?
Good Lord.
Tremendous power in this 7 to 8 mile an hour current. This is just crushed up mountain range, kind of a dilute soup of mountain water. Now there's a boat that's going on the right. That's the cut bank over there. River is moving north, carving out a new channel. Filling in on itself over on the left. See that they've got a pretty big field to run around in. They can jump over that driftwood. Everybody gets a lot of there. This river complex is really the best thing to describe it. It's about 6.5 miles wide, and there are multiple channels. So if we got up in Bill Johnson's airplane and looked down on this, it would look like braids in a hairstyle. The geologists call this a braid.
Hope they have a fish
Having
wheel
a
going.
presentation a little bit
That's
later
what
this afternoon. But for now, we can get a good look at the salmon smokehouse. Liv's cooking along, and she will be here to share some of her beautiful beadwork with you when we come back. Dixie is an internationally known beadwork artist and skin sewer, and makes ceremonial Athabascan clothing out of naturally tanned animal hides. For those of you who sew and appreciate fine sewing, will enjoy seeing Dixie's work in just a little bit. We'll come back here and have a very interesting Now, when these trading boats began to build up about every 60 to 100 miles along these rivers, it's incredible how quickly the Indians adapted to this consistent source of supply. Didn't take them long at all. They began to build log buildings that the women and children could live in all winter. The men went out and began trapping the local fur. Of course, they'd been doing that prior too, but they actually trapped excess pelts that they could bring back to that trading post and they would come out and march with the wool. Underneath that pretty home up on top, you'll see a little gray-green bush that grows along here. That's actually wild sagebrush. Find that in Arizona. We don't do this nose rubbing thing anymore.
Not a good one.
Now, the captains have an excellent view of multiple channels down here ahead of us. Old-timers had to pick their spot way early in order to navigate these tricky waters. What I think they're pretty smart. Now, over on the right, you get a nice view downstream, down towards Nenana. Some of you have been through there on the train already. You'll be able to see some of those tugboats that push the freight out on the Yukon today. Of course, no stern wheelers. They have a special shallow draft tug that pushes barges. Still has to know how to make these turns, though. So Captains Ken and Skip, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Since we survived that, we're going to have coffee and donuts, as I promised you. We'll be serving on all decks, folks, and you're all invited. We also have, of course, drinking water in our igloo coolers, if you would prefer that. But we have a nice applesauce cinnamon donut that we've been making for quite a while, and you're certainly welcome to try those. And up here on the Texas deck, Kelly's a big pot. Throw in enough salmon to feed his team, and each dog would eat one per day when they were out there working. Now, once Dixie gets the fillets peeled back and the backbone removed, she'll score each fillet about a half an inch or an inch apart on the diagonal, not breaking the skin, but opening up the meat up so that gravity helps out, increasing the surface area, allowing more smoke and fresh air to get to the meat more quickly and preserve it without any artificial means at all. And there you have a well-dressed chum salmon just that quick, with no fingers and thumbs on the table. How about that? Dixie, that's beautiful work as always. Now, what's the next step? Do we go right to smoke with a wet salmon?
Well, normally when we're catching a lot of salmon, we don't like to put a wet salmon like this directly under the smoke barrel. So we use this air drying rack over here, air dry the salmon for about 10 minutes to get the nice cracky texture, and rotate it all around the smokehouse until it's thoroughly dehydrated. Once your salmon is dried, doesn't weigh that much at all for a salmon this size. After it's dehydrated, only probably weighs maybe 13, 14 ounces. Not very heavy, but really important when my dad goes on a long traveling trip. The weight of it's important.
Well, now, what kind of wood do you recommend to smoke the salmon?
When we're making salmon for ourselves, we're a bit picky about how we fix it. We'll wash the fish in fresh water, put it in a nice salty brine. Then we would smoke it with a really good sweet wood. Up here we use alderwood, especially for good tasting fish. But when we're making salmon for the dogs, we don't do any of that. We smoke it with cottonwood or spruce. They're not too picky at all.
I think the picky bunch is probably this side of the fish wheel, so we'll stick with alderwood, and that's a good recommend. And Dixie, thank you for coming to camp this afternoon. We really appreciate this. Dixie's going to clean up the table, and she'll go cruising by in a minute or two in her little kicker boat, and then she'll be ready to greet you at her summer home at Chena Village, and she'll show you some of this beautiful clothing that she makes totally by hand. Dixie was commissioned by the Smithsonian in my hometown to produce a half-basket ceremonial cheese coat, which was on display last fall. They were so impressed with that work, they just kept that piece. They're going to make it part of the permanent collection.
That Eskimo ain't eating that. Throwing it away.
On the ground, and hey. Well, that's fish camp.
That's hanging it up.
Eat bugs and all.
Yeah.
Oh, some years is terrible bugs.
Very tough race, and he knows these trails very well. So we're going to turn things over to the other main partner at Trailbreaker Kennels, our good friend Dave Munson.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to Chena Village. I'm thrilled to be thousands of years we've been working together, and also I get a chance to introduce you to the dogs and tell you a little bit about the individual responsibilities each group of dogs has. Now, up here in the front are the most important dogs today. It's Chomsa and Jesse, my main leader up here. And they're the most important dogs because they listen for my verbal commands. You can see back here, there's no reins or mechanical means to signal which way to go, so they have to be listening all the time. But when we get to a fork in the trail and I want to turn right, I say G. When I want to turn left, I say Ha. They listen and respond immediately. But you know, these guys back here, Cecil and Coast are